All right, welcome. Today we are tackling a big one, the economic environment. We're going to break it down and make it super clear, using slides that pull directly from our source material to guide us.
So think about this for a second. How can something like national interest rates, the global price of coffee beans, and the cafe down the street all decide whether a business makes it or breaks it? It's a fantastic question, right? And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to unpack this whole economic environment that every single business, from a tiny startup to a massive corporation, has to deal with. We'll look at the huge forces shaping things on a global scale all the way down to why a cup of coffee costs what it does.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with the really big picture. Then we'll zoom right in to see how prices actually get set and what a single price tag can tell us. After that, we'll pull back to check out the competition, and finally, we'll wrap up by looking at what happens when the whole system, well, when it doesn't quite work as planned.
All right, let's jump right in. We're starting with the highest level view you can get, the satellite view. This is all about the macroeconomic environment. You can kind of think of it as the overall economic weather system that every single business is operating in.
So what is macroeconomics? Well, it's the study of the big stuff. We're talking national and even global economic forces, things like the business cycle, government policies, interest rates, inflation. These are like the giant ocean currents. No single boat or business can change them. But you absolutely have to understand them if you're going to navigate those waters and not just survive, but thrive.
You know, economies never just move in a perfect straight line upwards. They go through cycles, ups and downs. You've got the boom times, when everything's great, output is high, and prices are climbing. Then comes a recession, where things slow down, demand falls, and unemployment starts to rise. If it gets really bad, you hit a depression, which is the absolute bottom. And then thankfully, things start to pick up again in the recovery phase. For any business owner, knowing which phase you're in isn't just some academic exercise. It's everything. It dictates whether you should be hiring or maybe holding back and saving cash for a rainy day. So how do you manage these huge cycles? Well, governments have a toolkit with two main tools. First up is monetary policy. This is run by the central bank, and it's all about controlling the money supply and interest rates. Think of it like the gas and brake pedals for the entire economy. Then you have fiscal policy. This is what the government itself does, spending money, taxing people, and borrowing. This has a more direct impact on things like public services and overall demand in the economy.
Okay, so we've got these massive economy-wide forces swirling around. But the real question is, how does all that big picture stuff actually affect the price of, say, your morning coffee? To figure that out, we need to zoom in. We're going from that satellite view right down to the street level of a single market. First up, we have the law of demand. And honestly, this is something you already know intuitively. It's simple. When the price of something goes down, people are usually willing to buy more of it, right? This basic idea, this relationship between price and how much people want something, is a cornerstone of how all markets function. And then you've got the other side of that coin, the law of supply. This looks at it from the business's perspective. For them, a higher price is a good thing. It's an incentive. It means they can make more profit, so they're going to want to produce and sell more. So you can see how this creates a push-pull with demand.
So what happens when these two forces, demand and supply, meet? You get what's called the equilibrium price. It's kind of like the sweet spot. It's the exact price where the amount of stuff people want to buy is perfectly equal to the amount of stuff businesses want to sell. This is where the market naturally settles, with no major shortages and no huge piles of unsold goods.
Okay, so the market finds its equilibrium price. But what if one single business decides, you know what, I'm going to charge something different? What happens then? To answer that, we have to zoom in again, this time to a microscopic level. We're looking at the decision-making process of one single customer.
And this brings us to a super important concept called price elasticity of demand, or PED. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a way of measuring how sensitive customers are to price changes. It answers the million-dollar question for any business. If I change my price, what's going to happen to my sales? And trust me, getting this right can be the difference between success and failure.
So let's look at a real example from our sources. There was this product, right? The market research showed that if they just raised the price by 10 pence, just 10 pence, they'd lose 70,000 sales. When you run the numbers on that, you get a PED value of minus 1.05.
Okay, but what does a number like minus 1.05 actually mean? Well, because that number, ignoring the minus sign, is bigger than 1, economists say the demand is elastic. All that means is that customers are super sensitive to the price. For this particular business, it's a huge warning sign. It tells them that raising their price would be an absolute disaster. Yeah, they'd make a little more per item, but they'd lose so many customers that their total revenue would actually go down. They'd literally lose money by raising the price.
All right, so a business needs to understand its customers inside and out. But that's only half the story. You also have to know who you're up against. So let's pull our view back out a little and take a look at the competitive landscape.
And here's the thing. Not all competitive landscapes are the same. They can look really different. On one end of the spectrum, you've got something called perfect competition. Tons of businesses selling the exact same thing. On the other extreme, you have a monopoly, just one company in charge of everything. In between, you have things like monopolistic competition, like hairdressers or pubs, and oligopolies, with just a few big players, like in banking or oil. And why does this matter? Because the type of market you're in completely changes your strategy. Are you competing on price, on brand, on service? It all depends on the arena you're playing in. It really does change the entire game.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. We've gone from the 30,000-foot macro view down to the microscopic level of a single price tag and back out to the marketplace. So for our last section, let's zoom all the way out one last time and ask a really important, critical question. Does this whole system, this elegant dance of supply and demand, does it always work the way it's supposed to?
And the simple, honest answer is no, it doesn't. Sometimes that invisible hand of the market that's supposed to guide everything just fumbles. And when the free market, left to its own devices, doesn't lead to the best result for society as a whole, that's what economists call a market failure.
Now, these failures aren't just random glitches. They happen for some very specific reasons. For example, you can get market imperfections, like when a monopoly has way too much power and can jack up prices. You've got things called externalities, we'll touch on those in a sec, which are basically unaccounted for side effects. There are also public goods, things like national defense, that are hard to charge people for. And sometimes huge companies just get so big they can shut out all competition. These are all ways the system can go wrong.
Let's make this super concrete with the classic example, pollution. Think about a factory. It has to pay for its steel, its electricity, its workers. Those are its private costs. But what about the cost of the pollution it punks into the air? The health problems, the environmental damage? Who pays for that? Well, society does. That's the social cost. And the problem is, that social cost isn't reflected in the price of the factory's product. The free market on its own completely ignores it. That's a textbook externality.
And this whole idea of market failure brings us right to the heart of one of the biggest, most enduring debates in all of economics. We've seen how incredibly powerful free markets can be at setting prices and allocating resources. But we've also seen that they're not perfect. They have glitches. So this leaves us with the big, final question to think about. What's the right balance? How much should we rely on the freedom of the market? And when is it necessary for someone, like the government, to step in and regulate to fix its flaws?